A person can sense a man's hidden intentions from across a crowded room, long before he ever opens his mouth. Throughout life, many build an invisible armor against the quiet desperation and demands that most people carry into every interaction. Yet, there is a rare type of man who bypasses this armor completely, not by trying harder, but by doing something that seems entirely counterintuitive. By the end of this journey, you will understand the 5 deep psychological truths that explain this phenomenon, and why the final truth is the most powerful catalyst for genuine human connection. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus famously taught that it is not external events that upset us, but our judgment about those events. The same truth applies to human relationships. How you react to another person's presence, their quietness, their boundaries, or their emotional distance determines whether they open up or shut down completely. Where the anxious person reacts with desperation and performance, the person grounded in Stoic wisdom reacts with stillness. And that stillness is what changes everything. Let us explore the first realization, which sounds almost too simple until you witness it in action. A person often spends their entire life with their guard up. This is not out of paranoia, but necessity. From a young age, they learn that most people who approach them want something. They want attention, validation, control, or time. Almost every interaction carries a hidden transaction, a subtle agenda underneath the polite conversation, and they have learned to feel it coming from a mile away. But there is one specific energy that defenses have absolutely no answer for, a man who genuinely wants nothing from them. This is the mature man's hidden strength. When you reach a point in your personal growth where you are no longer desperate for validation, not hunting for approval, and not trying to extract anything from the person in front of you, their protective walls have nothing to fight against. They brace for the sales pitch, but the pitch never comes. They look for the angle, and there is no angle. They expect you to start performing, and you simply exist in calm contentment. When this happens, something extraordinary occurs. The defenses that have been held tight for years, having nothing to resist, begin to lower naturally. You did not push them down. You simply gave them nothing to fight against. Have you ever noticed how people instantly pull back the moment they feel you want something from them? The younger or less mature minds struggle with this because their desires leak out of them constantly. Their need for approval is visible in their posture, the speed of their replies, and the tension in their voice. Other people sense this hunger instantly, and the guard stays up. The Stoic, however, has learned the art of self-sufficiency. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. When your mind is colored by genuine contentment rather than desperate hunger, your presence reflects that ease. People sense that you are safe, and that safety is what allows them to put their guard down. This brings us to a second, deeper truth, which centers on a hunger so rarely satisfied in the modern world that the person who can fill it becomes unforgettable. It is the hunger to be truly heard. Most people spend their lives being only half listened to. The people around them hear their words while simply waiting for their own turn to speak. They listen just long enough to formulate a response, offer unsolicited advice, or steer the conversation back to themselves. They nod while their minds wander. They ask questions they do not actually care about. Then, occasionally, they meet a man who actually listens, fully, with his entire presence. A man who hears not just the words spoken, but the feelings and experiences underneath them. A man who remembers the small details, who references them later, and who is quietly, genuinely interested in the way their mind works. This level of attention is disarming. It is so rare that many have gone their entire lives without experiencing it. But real listening requires a quiet mind. An anxious, self-absorbed person cannot do it because their focus is trapped inside their own head, rehearsing their next comment or managing their own insecurities. They are too busy performing to actually perceive the person in front of them. The Stoic, having cultivated internal calm, has quieted that inner noise. He has nothing to prove in the conversation. This frees up all of his cognitive and emotional capacity to be directed outward. And when someone feels the undivided, unhurried attention of a man who is not trying to fix them or redirect them, they experience a profound sense of connection. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you listened to someone without planning what you would say next? You cannot fake this. Listening is not a performance. If you are pretending to care, the illusion will shatter within minutes. But if you have trained yourself to be calm enough to truly hear, you hold a key that very few possess. Seneca once observed that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, a design often forgotten in our noisy world. When you become a man who actually uses both, you become a rare sanctuary. This leads us to the third element, which is the longing to finally feel safe enough to be vulnerable. Consider the strong, independent people you know. The world sees their competence, their achievements, and their ability to keep everything together. What the world rarely sees is the immense exhaustion that comes with carrying that weight. They must be strong at work, strong for their families, and strong for their friends. They have spent so long holding everything up that they have forgotten what it feels like to rest. Underneath that capable exterior lies a quiet desire, the wish to be in the presence of someone stable enough that they can stop being strong for a moment. They long for a man who is solid, whose character is so well anchored that they can lean on him without him buckling. A man in whose presence they can safely let go of the armor, be tired, be uncertain, and just be human. This is not a physical strength, nor is it the loud, performative toughness of a man trying to prove his dominance. It is the quiet, unshakable steadiness that only comes from having faced life's challenges and survived. The Stoic has weathered real storms. He has faced loss, failure, and hardship, and has emerged grounded. That endurance manifests as a deep emotional foundation that others can feel instantly. They realize without a word that this man will not crumble under pressure. Have you ever had someone in your life who was so stable that their mere presence made you breathe a sigh of relief? True strength, as the Stoics understood, is not the absence of struggle, but the steadiness that comes from having moved through it. When you offer that steadiness, you provide a rare gift, the permission for another person to rest. This transition brings us to the fourth shift, which is that a person cannot look away from a man who is genuinely unafraid of them. Many men carry a subtle, constant fear of women or of others in general. It is a fear of rejection, of judgment, of saying the wrong thing, or of losing approval. This fear, even when hidden behind charm or confidence, shapes their behavior. It makes them overly agreeable, cautious, and performative. Others can sense this underlying anxiety, and it quietly erodes trust. A person cannot feel fully secure with someone who is afraid of them. But occasionally, they meet a man who is not afraid. A man who can hold their gaze without flinching. A man who can disagree with them calmly, kindly, and without apology. He is not rattled by their changing moods, not thrown by their emotional storms, and not desperate to keep them happy at the cost of his own self-respect. He appreciates their presence, but his sense of worth is not dependent on it. This emotional independence is incredibly compelling. It belongs to those who have done the inner work. The fear of disapproval is burned away only by lived experience, by facing rejection and realizing you are still standing. By failing and discovering your worth remains intact. What would change in your life tomorrow if you completely lost the fear of being rejected? The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote that true freedom is the ability to be unshaken by external forces. When you are unshaken by the emotional winds of those around you, you become a steady, reliable force that they can trust. Finally, we arrive at the fifth and deepest truth, the one that separates fleeting encounters from lasting connections, the ache to be seen all the way down. All their lives, people are looked at. They are evaluated, judged, rated, and categorized based on their appearance, their status, or what they can provide. But being looked at and being truly seen are two entirely different things, and the empty space between them is where deep loneliness lives. To be seen is to have someone perceive your essence, your fears, your hopes, and the silent parts of yourself you hide from the rest of the world. It is to be understood by someone who looks past the social mask and recognizes the actual human being underneath. The capacity to see another person this deeply is not a technique you can learn from a manual. It is the fruit of a life spent paying attention. It requires the depth that comes from self-reflection and the wisdom that comes from understanding your own heart. A person who has done no inner work will look only at the surface because that is all they have trained themselves to perceive. But the man who has cultivated his own soul develops eyes that see deeper. When he turns that perception toward another person, when he recognizes their true self, a profound bond is formed. They feel found. This is the ultimate form of connection, not to a face, a bank account, or a charming persona, but to the rare experience of being fully understood. But here is the most important truth you must carry forward. If you take any of these insights as a strategy, a tactic, or a checklist to get what you want, you will fail. Every single one of these principles only works when it is genuine. The moment you try to fake wanting nothing, your underlying attachment will betray you. The moment you perform listening, your lack of presence will show. The moment you pretend to have strength or to be unafraid, the first sign of real pressure will crack the facade. You cannot fake seeing a soul you have not actually taken the time to understand. These are not moves you make. They are the natural expressions of the person you have become. This is why these qualities cannot be rushed or purchased. They are the hard-earned rewards of personal maturity and conscious growth. They belong to the man who has done the inner work to become genuinely calm, genuinely present, genuinely strong, and genuinely wise. Do not go out looking for vulnerabilities to exploit. That is the path of a fragile ego, and it leads only to shallow results. Instead, focus on becoming the kind of man in whose presence these doors naturally open. Become the man who is self-sufficient, who listens deeply, who stands unshaken, and who sees others clearly. When you build that character, you will no longer need to chase or strategize. The right people will recognize your depth before you have said a single word, and they will move toward you as naturally as water finds its level. You have the capacity for this growth. The only question is whether you will choose to do the work. Everything you need is already within you, waiting to be forged through self-discipline and reflection. If these thoughts resonated with you, consider subscribing for more reflections on wisdom, strength, and character. Feel free to share in the comments which of these insights speaks to where you are on your journey today. Keep doing the work, focus on your growth, and become the grounded presence the world so rarely sees.